Hey Google, play Mary J. Blige, Real Love. Just trying to get the vibe right. Got it. Real Love by Mary J. Blige. Glad you got it. On Spotify. Playing. There it is. Okay. What's going on? All right. As everybody comes into the room, you know what I'm saying? Get your popcorn, sit down, have a seat, relax. Relax. You know how we do here. I want to make sure everybody has a good groove. You know what I'm saying? Get in the groove. Get in the vibe. Sometimes you just got to vibe in life. Only good vibes only though. Good vibes only. Only good vibes. All right, Mary, appreciate that. Hello, America. Hello, world. Hello, you. It is your man, Cashmere, California. And this is the Pod is Good podcast, aka the Notorious PIG. That's right. This is episode 22. 22. Make some noise for number 22. Make some noise for number 22. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Thank you for being here. Pod is good. And all the time, if you know, you know. If you don't, keep listening. You will learn. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Prepare to be entertained. That is what this show is designed to do, to either entertain or empower those that are listening, which today is you. Whether you're joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, or you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you're listening to us from, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your focus, and I will do my best to honor that time by giving you another incredible show here on the Pod is Good podcast. Moving right along, I'm going to bring in my guest. We are going down the government road today. We will speak on an area that we often talk about. We often get into the prison industrial complex, and all of us have some type of idea or opinions about it. Some are for it, some are against it. Some have people that have been in that complex. Some haven't. Some of y'all received those calls. Press, you know what I'm saying? Press 9. And others never don't even know about that life, which is cool. But all of us do understand that there is relief that needs to be done in the way that that system is approached. So my guest today has worked in government for a very long time. She's had her experiences and her views on that system and the systems around it, and just being a member of the community, seeing how that affects the youth, and how art imitates life, and how laws that are passed, how that affects things. She was kind of in the backbone of all this, being able to see it all unfold. And now she's going to share it with us. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the Pod is Good studio, make some noise for Sandra Clay.
Hey there. How you
How
doing?
you
How's
doing?
everybody? Good, good.
All right, can you see yourself okay?
I do. Thank you.
Good, good. How you been?
I have no complaints. I've been
None.
doing pretty good.
This is a good thing. Why
Yes.
complain anyway, they say, right?
Right. Nobody's listening.
All
Nobody's
right,
listening.
so before we get into the deep parts, you know what I mean? I told you we're gonna take a journey today. We had a great fireside conversation, um, along with your husband, who was here a couple of episodes ago, and we discussed some very, very interesting topics. And I said you gotta come on the show and relay that to the people. So before we get into all that, where did you grow up?
I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up in Oakland, went to school in Berkeley, and eventually moved to El Sobrante/Richmond, the later of my teenage years. So I'm an East Bay girl.
Okay, okay. And so did you have a big family, small family?
Um, I'm going to say medium size, as it
Okay.
relates to those that I interacted with daily because of, where we lived. But for the most part, my large family is mostly in Las Vegas. My
Mm,
grandmother's siblings, they all migrated to Las Vegas from Louisiana. And there was a ton of us there. I remember our first family reunion in 1979. There was approximately about about 400 to 500 of us in attendance, and the number grew for over maybe for the first 10 years of the
oh
consistency of the
my.
reunions. Our numbers just grew, but our generations fell off because they had passed away.
Mm,
So, but
mm,
from the conception of it, it was, yeah, easy 400 or 500 in Las Vegas. It was a
wow.
pretty big and beautiful thing to be a part of.
That is incredible. So as the generations grew, what happened? Did the younger generations not carry that baton? Is that what happened?
Absolutely, that is what happened. We have a family historian, and she's still alive today. And she's
Mm,
actually written a book on our family. She did a lot of research and was able to go back to as late as the 1800s. And
oh wow.
so, and what she discovered in her research was it would be my great grandmother was actually have the
Mm,
picture in my home on my wall. She was actually sold into slavery at the age of 7. And so from there, our family, that's as far back as she was able to go in terms of tracing our family history, which, for me, that still weighs heavy on my heart, at,
yeah.
the cruciality of slavery and separating a 7-year-old from their family, and just thinking about the turmoil, the heartache, the heartbreak that her mother had to go through. And but we persevered. Here
Yeah.
we are today, um,
Yeah.
still living and giving tribute to our ancestors and the ones that paved the way for us.
Absolutely. How does that, when you have that connection, someone that you know their story, it's not just some distant, our ancestors went through this. It's like you actually know, through your family, someone's story that was sold into slavery at 7 years old.
7 years old.
How does it make you feel when you hear people say like, man, y'all gotta just leave slavery, stop bringing up slavery, we get it. Like when they try to brush it under the rug, how does that feel?
It gives me a couple of mixed emotions. So I don't agree with we got to sweep it under the rug, because with that, our progression through slavery, in spite of the abuse and the mental, physical, financial, all the abuse, we've come, as we sing in church, oftentimes we've come this far by faith. So when I
Yeah.
hear that, I'm like, no, we got to honor those who did pay the price, shed their blood, cry the tears, work to their bones. We owe them that respect. However, what it does make my skin crawl, because that's not our history, that's not our story, that's not where we began. We're the mother of civilization. Like, um, various
Yeah.
ethnicities or religions or people don't want to give credit, but if you stop and really research the word, it's Africa. The Garden of Eden is in Africa. We were the mother of civilization, where Christianity is not some new founded faith that was discovered by non-African Americans. Um,
Hmm.
so and I myself feel convicted oftentimes, because we have such a rich history, a rich story, but we don't tell it. And we're not telling it to our children, our grandchildren. I'm trying to do better with my grandchildren, trying to empower them and help them understand we are not
Yeah.
what society says. We are
Absolutely.
intelligent. We are the ones who have
Absolutely.
pretty much created just about every little thing that we use. Something as simple to us is simple, a doorknob, but the doorknob was created by a black man. The red and the stoplight, just so many
Yeah.
different things. Wash machine, refrigerator. Um, but we allow them to tell us our story instead of we need to tell our own story. But we can't do
Yeah.
that if we don't know it and or give it to our children as they grow up.
Yeah. Yeah. Being able to pass those
You
stories
got to
down so
pass
they
them on.
truly truly understand. And then, truthfully, news stories, because like you said, a lot of it has been hidden from us. We've heard, the other sides or other people's story or depiction of our story,
Correct.
and they gave us a history, right?
Right. Right.
Whereas we're now finding out just how rich our history was and is in so many ways. I actually had a guest on that brought up an interesting point that I've heard a few times over the past 10 years or so in this like new awakening of what black history really is in America. And basically it's that through the Moorish people, black people were actually already here.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that it was only American
American
Indians.
Indians. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then then the Europeans came and then brought us. We were actually here, and some of us were actually American Indians. And I mean, it goes very deep, and it makes you wonder. Okay, well then, what was the truth? You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like
Right.
we heard about all the slave ships, and that's one thing he brought up. He said, "Think about it. Like, where are the slave ships? There are all these slave ships that brought slaves over. Where are they?
Right.
Like, and it was like a good point. Like, what happened to them? What happened to? Because America, they will hold a token of victory. You know what I mean?
Right.
They'll hold that forever. So it's
Forever.
like it's interesting that you don't see any of that anymore. But yeah,
Right. I know.
inventions from black people are
Yes. I know I had two major convictions for me. One was not realizing, as when I was in school, again, they want to tell us our history, our story, which they want us to believe it began when we became slaves and came to America, or that over in Africa, all we do is run through jungles and just, misinformation of that nature, right?
right.
It wasn't until I became older and adult. It was actually a sermon that I heard from the late, great, and I do mean great, E.V. Hill. He had preached, Where Do We Go From Here? And in his sermon, he actually gave a lesson, a history lesson, and it forever changed my perspective. The other thing was when I had the opportunity to visit, which I think is probably the most spectacular um, land place to visit, and that's the African American Museum in Washington D.C.
Mm,
Oh my God, there's
yeah,
that place is so beyond words. There's so much in there. Every
yeah.
one of us had to walk in and come out feeling empowered. But however, when I got to the first
Wow.
floor, which again, it's kind of models, not kind of, but it models the slave ship and the beginning of what is Americans' perspective in history of
Mm,
us. Um, I felt some kind of way. Kind of got in my feelings a little bit, but then I got convicted
I
again. Like,
understand.
but again, can I really get upset if I'm not doing my part, which is, teaching, my grandchildren as they come along, or
Yeah,
even having these discussions with my adult children about that's not who we are, kings and queens. We're intelligent people. We're smart. We can get things done. We're survivors. And so,
true.
yes, that's kind
Yeah,
of
yeah. Our history deserves more
it. Is
storytellers. We
absolutely
can't allow just books that are shoved in the back of libraries, or the one or two progressive teachers in the school to somehow lead the march that we should be leading
right,
as as family members and whatnot. And for somebody like you who has such a big family, y'all should be able to tell all of us.
right.
Y'all
Yeah, our
y'all
family
can
is.
pass you can pass along enough torches with that group.
Yeah, our family historian is still alive, and her mind is still strong and sound, and she's like 92 years old.
Oh
And
wow.
I love to go
That's
visit her and sit at her feet and just listen to all the knowledge and the
hmm
that she just imparts on you. She wants to. She'll yeah.
oh my gosh. I should have you take the phone there and sit it down and you talk to her and we'll just listen.
You know
I
what?
won't I won't ask any questions. I won't interrupt. I will be a fly on the wall and we will just take in the knowledge, because not only does that knowledge need to be shared, truthfully it needs to be recorded. And I think that's a big gap between our previous generations and ours now, is that the technology has developed in a way that we can now take those small conversations, those but powerful conversations, and record them so it's even easier to pass it along to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. But oftentimes our, earlier generations, they didn't grow up with technology, so it's very foreign to them.
Right.
It's very uncomfortable for them. And so finding that balance where they can have that open, transparent space where they can release all of this history, that we need to know, and for us to be able to capture it like it is, as pure as it is coming out of their mouths, not a third hand reenactment or recap of it, the more powerful it could be.
I believe we can make that happen. I'm going to be in her
Yeah,
presence in September. So when we're done, maybe a little later this week, we can chat about it.
I like it. I like it. All right, back to, so you have this huge family, go to Vegas, are having massive family reunions. um Is your family, were they like big on birthdays as well? Did they save everything for the big celebration, or did you guys celebrate all the time? What was your fondest memory,
Oh wow, we
of a birthday in your
celebrated.
childhood?
Yeah, wow, we celebrated. And so again, majority of the family is in Las Vegas, and then so I'm speaking of times when my grandparents were still alive as well, which takes us into the '90s and the early 2000s. So prior to your question is, did we celebrate? Absolutely, and for my grandmother and her siblings, we would often go for birthdays, anything. It would be birthday, retirement, wedding, debutante,
Right.
holidays, because it's 4th of July, Memorial Day,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving, and Christmas. We pretty much stayed in our own area. My
Mm.
parents, we would stay home. And so, but we would go to our grandparents' house one year, be at my grandparents. Next year, it would be at one of my aunties. The next year, it would be at my uncle's. And then one year, it's at our home. So, in that little travel group for the holidays, the intimate holidays, we averaged maybe about 25 to 30 people.
Oh wow.
And that went on until really, um, in terms of of my dad's family in the Bay Area, believe it or not, I'm actually the matriarch. And then I have an older cousin who's about 2 years older than me. He's actually the patriarch. And we've often looked at each other and go, we never thought we'd see this day when I'm the matriarch and you're the patriarch. So, with that being said, he and I and our children stay in contact as much as we can. But he lives in another
Mm.
state. So now it's really just about, I have 3 adult children, 8 grandchildren, my mother and my sister, um, and so our events really just incorporate us. We just celebrated my mother's 81st birthday. And
Very nice.
yeah, it
Very
was about
nice.
20 of us. And that was just from my children and my sister's children.
Wow. All right. So you are retired now, right? You're
I
chilling.
am August 5th.
Got your feet
Yes.
up now. Kind
Yes.
of. I mean, you got grandkids, so
I
I'm
got
pretty sure
grandbabies, though.
your feet
Yes.
aren't all the way up.
I'm a full time Grammy. I love it. I'm
That
Grammy
is
on
awesome.
standby.
What a blessing. What
Yeah.
a blessing. So I'm pretty sure that's a nice, change of pace from the government work that you did. Let's go back to there. Let's go to your first. Actually, what was your first job? Period.
Oh gosh, you talking about when I was like 14 or 15?
Yeah, I want
Um,
to know where it all began before we get into the government
all
side.
right.
What was the first one?
So my motivation to have a job and continue to keep a job started when I was I was 14, getting ready to turn 15, and I applied at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and I learned
Oh,
the entire menu and was really ready to start my first day of work. And I got there after I got out of school. My grandmother dropped me off. I was excited and found out I couldn't work because I was too young and I didn't have my school permit. So, needless to say, I was crushed, but I didn't give up. I waited. I had to be 15. And then I had to get a permit from my counselor. So as soon as I turned 15, I got my worker's permit, and then I went and applied at Jack in the Box. So that was my first job as a teenager, was Jack in the Box. And then just determined to work. I actually picked up a second job with the first job as a teenager, and I worked at McDonald's and Jack in the Box at the same time.
Look at you, all of them, just hitting
I was
all the
like,
top dogs.
right, right, really, what is really going on with you, right? And so, um, and that went on maybe for about a year, maybe about a year or so, and then I went start working at an old clothing store. I'm not even sure if you were born at that time, but it was called Chess King, and I worked there throughout the rest of my high school years.
That was a shoe
It
store.
was no, it was a men's clothing store.
Oh, men's clothing. Okay.
Right, right. And so I worked there until I graduated from high school, and then I went into the banking industry for about a year and a half. The bank was called Crocker Bank. They've closed down, and again, that was years ago. And then from there, just little odd jobs that more in the corporate arena. And then finally, I started working for the city and county of San Francisco. That would be my first county job, and it was in San Francisco at in one of the communities called Hunter Point. And I
What was
worked
it
at one of
called?
the satellite clinics um, as a unit clerk at one of the satellite clinics in San
And
Francisco.
what did you say it was called?
The name of this clinic, or I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, so the name of the clinic was Southeast Clinic,
Okay.
and it was a satellite of San Francisco General Hospital.
Oh.
And a San Francisco General Hospital is governed by the city and county of San Francisco. So that was my
Okay.
first government job. I was there for about 8 years. And then my next government left there and worked for CHP as a dispatcher. And I did that
Hmm.
for about 3 years. Um,
CHP dispatcher.
California Highway.
That sounds like a big jump.
It
What
was a
was?
huge jump. It was a huge jump.
Wow.
But yeah, it was closer to home. The benefits and everything were there. They were both good with both industry. Both the
Okay.
city and county. It was also, but it was a nice travel for me because at that time I was living in Vallejo, and so it was quite a travel. California Highway
Mm,
Patrol was is the control center is also located in Vallejo, so that was a much
mm,
more convenient and made more sense commute.
yeah. But what were those? What were those shifts like for a dispatcher? Is that like 10-hour shifts,
um,
12-hour? I mean,
we had options. You could do 8 hours, you could do 10 hours, or you could do well. Actually, you could do 8 or 10. When I
okay.
left, they implemented the 12-hour shift. But while I was there, it was either 8 or 10 hours. I always tell
Mm,
people one of the reasons I left is because the hours and the work, the expectations of your presence, it's not family friendly, which makes sense
mm,
because the radios have to be manned 24/7. So
yeah.
you got to do a lot. Just say if I wanted to attend my niece or nephew's graduation and it wasn't on my normal day off, I had the
Right.
responsibility of finding somebody to trade with me. So you can
That makes
imagine
sense.
Christmas time, New Year's, Thanksgiving, those days kind of were very challenging because everybody wants those that had the right schedule. They were home with their
Yeah.
families. The new kids on the block, we had to take whatever was left. So
Yeah, that sounds tough.
yeah, so
That sounds.
it was a struggle. My boys were playing involved in sports, and I was missing a lot of their activities.
Oh,
So it kind of influenced me to look for different
something else.
employment,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
that's how I ended up at the California Department of Corrections. But prior to me going to the California Department of Corrections, I worked as an office manager for a charter school in Vallejo too. So
Nice.
yeah.
So now, as a dispatcher, do you recall like the craziest call? I know every dispatcher has to have at least that one story where they're like, I cannot believe this.
Yeah.
happened today on my watch.
um, I've had a couple of challenging calls, but they turned out to be successful. When I say
Hmm.
successful, meaning CHP were able to get to him, and the person was the last that I know. The person was okay, and one in particular that I remember, a family called, and they were hysterical because their brother had called and pretty much said goodbye to him, and they had very little information. They knew what type of car he was in, and they knew the basic vicinity that they thought he was going to be in, which was the pier in Berkeley. So I had to try to work off of that very little information, and I had to work with Berkeley Police Department because at that time,
Wow.
911 calls were routed to Highway Patrol, even if it wasn't in Highway Patrol's jurisdiction. So when they called the particular call and the concern wasn't necessarily in CHP's jurisdiction. So when I was on the phone with Berkeley, I'm translating, or I'm just going between the caller and the police department. And so we had to work together, myself and the police department, and to go check peers. I tried to get as much information as I could about him as in the person of interest. And
Yeah.
so, long story short, the he was found at the Emeryville Pier. So that was kind of
Yikes.
one. Yeah, that was one.
But man, that has to feel like the it has to be interesting to go from, you were just maybe sitting there talking
Right,
to your coworker. Oh, girl, I can't wait to go to lunch. Oh, I brought some leftovers from last
right,
night. And then next thing you know, you are completely engulfed in a family's potential suicide watch.
right, right.
Like to make that shift and then to somehow come off of it once you get off the phone
Right. You
sounds tough.
yeah, it is. And you're absolutely right. You can be sitting there 1 minute and the next thing you know your adrenaline is flowing. But it's interesting how your knowledge and your training kicks in. Just you
Mm,
go in automatic, pilot, and you just start asking, the right questions. You're multitasking, you're, inputting information. You're, like I said, I was communicating with the caller and the police department,
yeah.
but you have to remain calm. And when I say remain
Right.
calm, I'm speaking of the dispatcher, because you don't want to excite the callers. If you're excited, they're excited. You're not giving them any comfort or building any trust, that they
Right.
trusting that you're helping them, that we're going to get through this together. But when it's all
Sure.
said and done, one of the things that CHP, the supervisors were very mindful, because they monitor the calls as well. They were very
Hmm.
mindful that after a stressful call of that nature, they make sure someone comes and relieve you so you can walk away and
Mm,
kind of debrief. If you need to talk to them about it, if you need to, just get a breath of fresh air or just kind of sit quietly for a few minutes, they always are. That's part of the process. And they were very good about ensuring that happened.
so that movie, I forgot the name of it, but Halle Berry was in it, and she was a
911.
dispatcher.
Yeah.
That was it. It was
I
down.
think it was called 911 or the call. It might be called the call.
So then they were pretty accurate to life as far as like the process and how it goes and how the call is treated and the person being relieved and all of
Yes,
that.
yes. And you can stay with the
Wow.
call to see it all the way through. Um,
Yeah.
yes. Interesting enough, I didn't watch that movie for that very reason. I'm like, I had enough of that in my life. I'm not trying to, not on my free time. I'm not doing it.
Right. Right. I'm not trying to watch
I'm not
work,
trying to watch it. No.
even if it is Halle Berry.
If it,
I'm looking.
the Hallie is the bomb, but yeah, I'm gonna have to. And you do know at the end of the day, the outcome's going to be good, or hopefully it
Right.
works
Right.
out. But yeah, just a little too. I left that behind.
Yeah. One thing you said, you guys have to try to stay calm, so that, the caller isn't excited. But I've also heard where that can do the opposite. Like I've heard calls where the person is like, you need to get here fast, send somebody fast. And they're like, okay, what's your name? And they're like, Don't worry about my name. Just get here. They're bleeding, and okay. Are you close to him? And the tone makes them think
You don't care.
you're not taking this as serious as it is. And I've heard that like in those 911 calls from maybe court cases that I listened to or watched, and it felt like that was actually irritating the caller because they felt like you don't have the sense of urgency that I need you to have.
I'm smiling because I've had a call like that, and the guy actually
Yeah.
he actually cursed me out. I was all kind of B's and anything he could come to his mind. I was just everything but,
Oh
helpful.
man.
So it was a situation where he had witnessed a child, it might have been a teenager. He was out on the Delta and he went under.
Mm,
And so when he calls, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. I'm asking information. However, he said he cussed me out and told me to stop asking those blank questions. Get somebody out here now. As I said, sir, I acknowledged, that he was, scared. I says, but as I'm speaking to you, Coast Guards are en route. Help is on the way, and
right.
you in your ability to answer the questions that I'm asking only helps the person you're concerned about get the adequate help that they need. And so he kind of settled down a little bit. So
Yeah.
I think in situations like that, they just have to, or I'll say, we just have to let the callers know
Yeah.
that um, prog- um, there's movement. People are
Right.
coming. The
Right.
ambulance is en route, or because the way it's set up, um, I'm taking the information. There's another dispatcher that's already speaking with, for example, the Coast Guard's dispatcher, and they're relaying the message, and the Coast Guard is en route, and um, the I'll just call it the support dispatcher is putting the information in, so I can see and I know that somebody's on their way.
Mm,
But this information I'm asking only helps. I could tell, go to the Delta, but where? I mean, where the Delta on the north side, the east, where? So we
right.
have to ask the
Right.
questions.
Yeah.
But
No, it
I
makes
think letting them
sense.
know that I there is movement. This is happening. Ambulance is are on the way. The fire department is around the corner, or
Mm.
letting them know that there's help. And I'm not just sitting here taking information.
I
It would be
wonder.
nice.
Yeah, I wonder if it's happened enough that maybe in the future they'll adjust the policy to, once you maybe there's like levels that they give you guys as far as like, you know, uh, the caller level, like they're at a 1 or they're at a 5, and if the dispatcher recognizes that they're talking to someone who might be at a 4 or 5, immediately they let them know help is on the way. Continue to answer these questions so that we can provide more help, and then go and you know what I mean. Maybe just kind of giving them that moment of reassurance that it sounds like they need, and sometimes, like you said, they may not get it until they kind of flip, and then they get it and they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know.
Right. I do. I think, but it is important. There's certain information you have to get before anything, and that's
Right.
location and what's happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
while I'm trying to settle you down, we're losing minutes and seconds that
Mm,
can make a difference in a person's rescue or assistance. So I do know our training is um, immediately what is it and where, and then the other part, yes, when I get that, I get the location, I get what's going on, so I'll know what type of help to send. Then yes, then I can give you the speech of comfort, letting you know I'm working with you, this,
yeah.
I'm not wasting your time. But the other good thing, that since I haven't been a dispatcher in years, but now the 911 calls, if you call from your mobile phone, I don't know if you remember me stating, initially they all went to California Highway Patrol, which of course it was a floodgate. And often you hear people complain about, I called, I couldn't get through.
Yeah.
Well, if it's, you can have 50 people calling on the same incident. So that's tying up all the lines. People don't know that, and that's
Right.
understandable. But what also was happening, if you had a phone call, emergency, and you were, let's just say, in your house, that's not a highway patrol call, but it was still coming to you, coming to highway patrol. So now they have it. The lines now are filtered to go to the appropriate agency. So if you
That
use your
helps.
phone in your house, it's supposed to go to the local police department and or sheriff department, if whoever jurisdiction it is at that time, versus them all just going to one center.
Yeah,
So I think that may be helpful, um, because if it's the Vallejo Police Department, then they're going to know exactly where you are.
yeah. Now that definitely sounds like a good
Mhm.
adjustment that they made. Because you're
Yes.
right. I've had a few times where I had to call 911, and matter of fact, I was in the Bay Area uh, the last time that I remember it vividly happening, and I probably put in uh, over 20 calls to
Oh,
911 and didn't get anyone at all the whole time, and was the whole time speeding through San Francisco trying to find a hospital. Um,
wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and that was
Wow.
that was an eye opening experience. That, like, wow,
Wow.
for people that don't call nine one
Hmm.
one, but we all know it, and so you just expect that when I have an emergency, I'm gonna call 911,
Right.
and that's gonna be my best option. But no one thinks, well, if I can get through, or if the
Right.
line is open,
Right.
or if
Right.
no, it's like this is 911. This should be the
Right.
phone number I can call anytime, and
Right.
someone's gonna answer.
Right. Well, and that's our training, right? I mean,
Yeah,
growing up, or just now, emergency messages is you dial 911.
right.
But I mean, I'm not real sure what what the concerns are. I don't know if it's short staffed or what,
Yeah,
but it is very alarming when you call 911 and nobody um, picks up the phone, or you get a voice message. Stay on the line. Someone will be with you shortly.
right, right.
Yeah, that's very alarming.
I mean, imagine it's one thing to be in my situation, a young person, that's driving and can kind of facilitate it themselves.
Right.
But imagine that you're not that, and you
Correct.
really need it right now, and it's life or death. And you could be somebody that's defenseless, handicapped, you're in your home, someone's banging and hitting the windows, and there's nothing you can do, and you're calling 911 getting a busy signal. I mean,
Yeah, it's pretty alarming.
yeah. So, but interesting that or not interesting, but good that you didn't have those kind of stories where things just didn't go so right.
But I do know about some that did not. They were not my calls, but
Okay.
I was there and saw enough of that too, though.
Oh
So
yeah.
pretty, yeah. When
Okay.
yeah, it's pretty painful,
Yeah, I can
But you
imagine.
just you just you have to find out how to process and I'm talking about now for my own. Well, I had to learn how to process calls that were beyond my control,
Yeah.
for for peace sake, or not to carry it with me. I worked really hard on being able to leave my work at work and leave home at home, and
Yeah.
try not to bring anything home. I only had one incident where I brought it home, in the sense that there was an accident, and um, when the highway patrol rolled up on the accident, there was a little girl sitting in the back seat, and she had her seatbelt on, and unfortunately, her mom was ejected from the car and had
Oh.
passed away. And the little baby said she was just sitting with her seatbelt on, waiting for her mom to wake up.
Oh.
And so the highway patrolman who responded, it kind of took him back a little bit. He and I both talked about it. So I came home, and the 5-year-old didn't know her any phone numbers or addresses to family members. And my daughter was about the same age, and I came home and drilled her and made sure she um, knew
Yeah.
my number, her dad's number, her grandmother's number, just
Dang.
address, things like that we take for granted.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's painful.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
painful. And did so? Is there a specific protocol for the dispatcher in those situations when things go down a tragic end? Like, is there a mandatory amount of time that they have to take off? Is it the rest of the day is immediately off, go home?
Um,
I
it
mean,
it it does depend on the nature of the incident. It does depend, and that's the dispatchers. The supervisors trust the dispatchers to do a self evaluation and just kind of determine what they need to do.
Okay.
Um, we've had situations where an officer may have lost his life in the line of duty, and there were some dispatchers that were had personal relationships, and I mean in a healthy way. I don't mean and they've had to go home because they couldn't finish the day out. And it's interesting when regardless of whatever the work relationships are on the
Mhm.
floor is what we call it, when a tragedy hits any of the dispatchers, everybody come together. And that was one of
Mm.
the wonderful things of it. Or you can take, just be relieved from your radio. I just need a break for an hour, leave the grounds, come back. Just kind of they let the dispatcher kind of determine what they need to get through
Gotcha.
the incident. Mhm. Now that's the way it was when I was there. I don't know what it's like now.
Right. I hate to say it, but I know there's somebody out there that's dispatching today that's taking a little advantage of that and just waiting for the call that they go, "Oh, I need a couple days. I need a couple days,"
Oh, I need to go to
and then they
Hawaii.
call like, "Okay, girl, I can go. I'm gonna be able to go to the party. I got off work." it it has to happen. Has to happen. All right, and then so how long were you a dispatcher again?
For about 3 years. For about three
Okay,
years.
okay.
Yeah.
And then you say you left. So you left being a CHP dispatcher, and then what was next?
I went to the school. I went and worked for a charter school in Vallejo. It was called Mare Island
Okay.
Technology School. So I
Oh,
went and
nice.
worked there for about, I think I might have been there 2 years. And then that's
Okay.
when I finally landed at the prison at California Department of Corrections and
And
Rehabilitation.
then so once you get to the prison, that's your
That's it.
last time having the first day at a new
That
job.
that was it.
That was it.
That was it.
Okay. And you were at Solano County
So
Prison.
I retired from Solano County, well, not county, Solano State Prison. There's a difference in county and
Solano
state.
State Prison.
So, yeah, I retired
Yes.
from Solano State Prison. However, when I returned, when I started with California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, I was at California Medical Facility. And both California
Mm.
Medical Facility and Solano used to be one prison, and then they split it. So they're literally like next door to each other.
Oh wow.
Hmm. Literally.
Gotcha. So that's not the one. I remember there was a prison in Vallejo. What is
Not
what is
not a
that?
prison in Vallejo. There's no
Is
prisons.
that a jail?
Well, you have jails because you have the police department.
Sorry, not Vallejo.
Vacaville?
Vacaville.
Yes.
Yes,
They're both
Vacaville.
still in Vacaville.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay. Oh, so it's the same one.
Yes. So
So that
California Medical Facility
uh-huh.
and Solano State Prison are now two different prisons. But at one
And they're both
time
in
they were
Vacaville.
one, and then they uh, um, split off. But they're still
Mm.
located at the same places.
Got you. Okay. And you worked in what department?
The records department,
In the records.
correct?
So you see who's coming in, who's going out.
Yes.
You like part of the backbone of the facility.
Correct. Absolutely. Everything flows, pretty much everything flows in and through the records department as it relates to the inmates.
Okay. So then first question I have, because I ain't never been to prison, but I've seen a lot of movies, I've heard a lot of stories, and there is one consistent thing that I hear. Somehow, people always end up leaving with less personal items than what they got there with. What happened, records department? Where
Well,
is all the stuff
okay,
going?
so now the inmate items um,
Mm,
are beyond our scope. We didn't deal mostly with that. However,
mm.
just from being there and talking and kind of seeing how things go, there could be various reasons inmates' items are, um, let's just say, misplaced or unaccounted for. Okay. One could be when inmates are moved from one institution to another institution, something can get left behind it, that way. It depends on the items because a lot of the things that the inmates are allowed to have are in their possession. So did they give it away? Did somebody take it? It isn't always because custody, so to speak, is mishandling their items.
Gotcha.
So it just kind of depends. I mean, I know the story make it seem like there's a cut and dry answer to why things are happening, but it's so much that goes on. Um, Unfortunately, that's a whole different world. It's
Yeah.
a whole different culture. Um, so to say, well, so and so had a 9-inch TV, but when he left, his TV didn't come with him. Well, did he give it away? Did he barter it for something? I'll give you my TV, you give me your noodles. I mean, it's
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
there's just no straight answer.
Yeah.
Um, do things get misplaced and I would say lost sometimes during the inmate movement? That could be the case too.
Okay, so I'll get like a umbrella like view of your time there, and then we'll kind of get into more detail. So when you look back on it now, having done your time
I,
from day one to the day you leave and retire, when you look back at that time, what is your feelings about it? What is your takeaway from that time of your life?
um, well, first of all, the work that I did, I always say that it's not the type of work where when you're done, you go at the end of the day like, I made a difference or that was good. Unlike a teacher who might at the end of the day get a student who might have been a C student and you've helped them elevate to a B student or an A student. You feel a sense of gratitude or a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Working in the prison industry doesn't offer you that. But what it does offer you is to the opportunity to do the best job you can do to keep your community safe and to we have the title rehabilitation, and the hope is that there are inmates that come in and they do, and some do are coming out rehabilitated. They have changed their lives. So under that scope, you do feel like, okay, that's, although I wasn't directly responsible, you can't feel a sense of, I'm glad to hear that you're done, you're not coming back. I've talked to a couple of inmates, well, one in particular, who has been released and just doing us. He is a phenomenal contribution, to the community.
Wow.
And we just happened to have a discussion, and then he shared some things with me, and it was like, oh, you almost could be a poster board for the Department of Corrections and
Wow.
Rehabilitation because this is what you want it to look like.
Right.
Married, great job, good father, just doing the things that you learned while you were locked up that you needed to make a change, and you did.
Yeah.
Um, the Department of Corrections system I feel is really complex. It has some good things in terms of, that sounds like an oxymoron. How can
Right.
prison have some good things? Um, but there's always the great concerns that I think the department is trying to do much, much better. And I can say this because I had to attend a lot of the courses. It's mandatory that in regards to um, eliminating excessive force, especially with all the bad publicities and things that are happening now in the media with officers and the
Right.
mistreatment, of citizens who are
Yeah.
of color. So I will say Department of Correction has become very conscientious about it and are really doing working within their scope to implement zero tolerance
Hmm.
of excessive force to the point where if I had eyewitness um, an officer abusing an inmate and I didn't say anything, there would have been repercussions for me as well.
Oh wow.
That's how serious they are. If you
Wow.
see it, you don't report it, then you are going to be implemented in it as well. And
And is
so
that is
every
that policy? Sorry, is that policy from what you recall? Is that statewide or is that just at that
it's
facility?
no, it's statewide. It's CDCR
Hmm.
policy. And so every year we had to take a course. It was the same information, and you had to literally you had to take a test. You had to participate. You had to um, understand the seriousness of it. It wasn't something we could just brush under the rug. And so I kind of commend them for that. Hopefully, it's been effective. But unfortunately, people are people. Um, but the
Yeah.
hope is that the message is becoming clearer.
Yeah. And so, uh, looking at it, I don't know what you felt about the the prison system prior to going, prior to having this job in corrections, but now having done it, do you believe in it?
Um, yeah, it's necessary. So much like you, I didn't know anything about prison, never been to it, never visited anybody, don't know anybody that was incarcerated. So the whole prison um, industry was something absolutely new to me. And it did take me a couple of years. I don't know if you ever really just get used to it,
Yeah.
but it did take me a couple of years to kind of settle in and understand where I was, what I was doing. I remember my first week working at the prison, and for free, I would just say everyday people like yourself, myself.
Yeah.
You go through a door at your own will. You open the door, go through, you go out. You open the door, you come in. You have that freedom. You just come and go. Well, on one of my first couple of days, I had to get used to. It actually took me longer than that. That I couldn't just go through the door when I wanted to. I literally had to be let into the door.
Mm.
I had to wait until the gate was open. Once that gate closed, I'm in. I have no control over in and out you do in your free life. So
Wow.
it just took a minute to understand when you're working at a prison there was different things that I was accustomed to that you cannot do when you're incarcerated or you when you work. Even employees, we couldn't have cell
Yeah.
phones. We There was certain type of this is going to sound interesting, but just throwing a pen, a writing pen, in the garbage can
Hmm.
you couldn't do that. That was considered hot trash. You
Hmm.
have to put it in a certain box. It has to be
Interesting.
sealed. Certain employees have to pick it up to discard it. It was just certain normal things
Wow.
that were now
Yeah.
not the norm anymore. So learning to have to adjust to that. Well, it had a lot to do with, again, the safety of employees, the safety of the community, and the safety of the inmates as well. Um, I do think the institution is necessary, especially for those that may have made a bad choice, realize it, and now they want to do better because it
Hmm.
now is offering opportunities to go to school, to learn skills, to do a lot of self reflection, a lot of self growth. Then there's those you can't help because they're unfortunately, their criminal tendencies are a part of who they are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you know, yes, in one sense. Do I think some things are a little extreme in terms of, punishments and things of that nature? I can tell you there were a few cases I thought, wow, really? Um, and then there were some that I thought I feel a little bit better knowing they're not on the streets.
All right. I don't. Now you're out, so I don't know how much how much information you can really let us know here on the
Mhm.
podcast. But corruption seems to run rampant in most uh, government systems. From somebody's eyes, there's some kind of corruption. You being involved in records, it seems as though you may have caught wind of some corruption here or there. Anything you can tell us?
Well, I will not. I would absolutely not deny that there's corruption.
Hmm.
There's some unfortunate um, staff that take advantage of their position.
Hmm.
Um, I wish I could say everybody was 100%, but they're not. Um, but I do think there's a protective layer where the department is being more scrutinized for the misuse of staff or misuse of employees. Do I think they will be able to 100% eliminate it? I don't. Because people are people. Just like we're learning, I remember growing up being told, the police, they're your friends, that they're safe. They
Yeah.
are people of, of comfort. If you find a policeman, you're good.
Yeah.
And now we've gone from that to being pulled over for a ticket because maybe, you're speeding or, violating the law, whatever. And the fear is, am I going to come out of here alive? You know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's the good and the bad in, I think, in all aspects of employment, with, officers, peace officers, doctors, I just think lawyers, I think everywhere because people are people,
Yeah.
you know. But
Yeah.
I think as a whole, do I think an agency can do better through training, monitoring, expectations, education? Yeah, those things can help,
Hmm.
but it's
And
not going
so,
to eliminate it completely. No.
yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Sometimes it's hard on the outside trying to gauge how much of it is beneficial and how much of it isn't, because
Right.
obviously
Right.
TV shows, they if they talk about, or do any exposés or documentaries on the prison system, it's more of the sensationalized aggression
Right.
and race wars and
Right. They give you the worst
corruption
story.
and
Right.
right. And so you're kind of looking at that, and it makes it difficult to know how much how much of it is actually benefiting someone. How many people are taking those classes and coming out with a degree, or coming out with a trade, or finding a religion, or helping some other inmate because they know, they're gonna die behind those bars, but they're trying to inspire the young guys that are coming in. Like, you don't really see that, and I'm pretty sure in your position, you didn't really see that either. I would assume, right?
Well, actually, no. I have seen some. I've seen some. That's what I think I was alluding to a little bit earlier. If they want to make a change for the better, there
Mm-hmm.
are programs there that's available for them. It's just like, you can present it, but in anything, you have to, as a person, have to want to make the change. They
Right.
can't make you change.
Yeah.
You have to want to. And I will say that CDCR has put in programs and continuing to find programs to implement that offers those that are incarcerated opportunities to change their lives around.
Yeah.
And so one of the programs was um, you're gonna have to be patient with me because I've been out of it for about 2 years. So some of the some of the language has escaped me. I
Yeah,
think
I
that's on
understand.
purpose because I'm
Yes,
retired.
it definitely is. It
Uh,
definitely is. You can,
um, but there were ways that they can earn what we would call merits or
mm,
um, milestone credits are things that they could do. So what that means is, so they go and take a class to maybe just, you know, maybe an English class, to help improve their language skills or um, a certain amount of reading, not just any type of reading, specific, readings that were approved. They might improve their reading skills, or they might take a carpentry class,
mm,
or um, an iron class, just different types of classes, different
yeah,
types of programs. So when let's just say an inmate enrolled in one and he did 6 weeks of that course. Well, if he did 6 weeks of that course, so many days was taken off of his sentence. Does
Ah,
that make sense? Right.
ah,
Now, hear me, there are criteria for being able to take the courses. So it's, but um, they meet the criteria, which, it's pretty open. Um, and so they take the courses. So they did 6 weeks of it. So now you get credit for 40, you get to go home 42 days sooner. And they can take more than one. They might take 4 or 5 courses. So there
oh.
were
So it's like a
opportunity.
1-to-1 rate of
Correct, correct.
time in class and time
Hmm.
off your sentence.
Right. But
Got it.
there is a maximum of how many, like maybe I'll just throw this out there because again, like maybe a maximum up to 1 year. If you plateau to at 1 year, that you can take off your sentence.
Yeah.
You know.
That's
And then once you reach the 1 year, you wait and then you start all over again. So, but these programs are, for the intent of rehabilitating or um, helping them to even just do a lot of self evaluation. What
yeah.
got you here? What are you going to do different? What resources do you need to do, to survive on the outside?
Man, they were smart to put a limit on it though, because let's
Right.
just say, God forbid, I had to do something because they were threatening my family, and I ended up in prison. And I found out that I could get for every day that I spent in class, I get a day off my sentence. And let's just say I had 10 years. Well, I'm gonna be in class for 5 years straight and get out in half the time. There's nothing else to do. What are
Right,
my
right, right,
options here?
right, right. Right.
Man, okay. So on the flip side, to play devil's advocate, I guess a little bit, what stands out is the thought that for someone to take that step, right, and say, you know what, I'm gonna go and better myself. I'm gonna go and try to do something for me, invest some time back into me while I'm here. That
Mhm.
takes a certain level of awareness, a certain
Correct.
aptitude level to make a decision there, and you would assume that there might be a large majority of the people that are there that don't have that. And so then it kind of feels like you're offering a great program to a part of the population, but then what happens to the others? You see what I mean? I mean, it's for
Well,
everybody, but
but see, at that point, it becomes about safety. If you got a person that, I don't want to paint the picture that everybody in there has that mindset. There are people in there that need to be in there. It's
yeah.
sad, for our safety, for community safety, for I mean, and those that are listening might feel like I'm being judgmental, but you got to understand, I literally have seen cases, I've read cases, I've processed cases that are frightening, and
Mm,
I have said, okay, I feel better knowing that they're here and not actually on the street. Um, However, I mean, there's one inmate that actually stated, "If you let me out, I'm going to do it again."
mm,
You got to trust that, So it's the prison system is it's extremely different from society. Officers that go in, and a lot of people may even think that because you have good officers as well with well intent, that they all are doing too much. Listen, these people are putting their lives on the line
yeah.
every day,
Yeah.
because everyone that's in there, you got smart, talented, creative, genius minded people that are unfortunately made a bad decision that landed them in prison. So everybody in there is not, unintelligent. Um, you know, just they're not. There's some very, very intelligent people um,
Yeah.
incarcerated, and they, like you said, there's nothing but time. They have nothing but time.
Yeah.
So they're thinking of things that you and I would never think about. And so those that want it is there, and yes, there are those that don't have the ability um, to make a decision and go, yep, I want to do this so I can get better, and do better.
Wow.
And so
So
let me back up to, it's not all, and it's not a situation where, okay, I got 10 years like you said, and I'm just going to do 5 years of class and bam, I'm out. There's so much more that goes with it too. The
mhm.
evaluation, they have to be classified as to be termed. It depends on the type of crime it was.
Yeah.
A violent crime is not just going to be able to walk through a door because I did 5 years of extra time and show no signs of any growth, any
Yeah.
remorsefulness. The recidivism is there, and there's highly likely that they'll be back. All those things are taken into consideration. So
Mhm.
I don't want to present it as if, oh, they just take a class and then bam, they're out.
Yeah, I
But for
probably
those that
oversimplified it just so I can get myself out. I think that's what I did.
well, I'm not worried about you. You're just not going to end up there.
There you go. um, wow, wow, that's interesting. So dealing with records, did you ever deal with any high profile inmates, and if so, is there any difference in the process of I don't know what you call it, inmating or inmating an inmate, inbounding, or a high profile inmate?
So we've dealt with every level of inmate, and that has been in the custody of the prison of the state of California. What I mean by that is, every inmate that comes in has what we call a file, a record file, and so in the file it gives the history of the inmate's life, the crime, the court documents, behaviors while they're in prison. We were responsible for calculating inmates' release dates. We were responsible for making sure when they were processed in, that the court, meaning the judge, um, applied the right sentence to the crime according to the penal code,
Mm,
um, the state penal codes, and according to, we were responsible for making sure that the inmates are being treated according to what we call the manual, um, the departmental manuals, and we had to make sure, according to the state Title 15, that all the laws and the penal codes were being properly applied. So yes, in that case, we would, if it was a high profile inmate, we would be responsible for overseeing that record and making sure that everything was being applied accordingly. And now that I'm speaking, I think there's only one high profile case that I remember in particular that I actually had hands on and had to process for what we would call a lifer hearing. And lifer hearings were for inmates who were serving life sentences with the possibility of parole,
mm.
and I would be responsible for coordinating, making sure that that inmate had his due process and went before the board of prison terms to determine if he was eligible for release or not.
And so, who puts that panel together? I always wondered that. Like when they have to
The
sit there in front of the parole board, are
Yeah.
those just people that sit around each day doing parole boards, or do they do other things and then and they have that job as well?
Well, usually there are commissioners, is what they are called, the commissioner and deputy commissioners, and I believe that position is appointed by the governor.
Okay.
And that is their role. They go from institution to institution. I don't know how many there are right now, but certain commissioners, deputy commissioners, are assigned to certain uh, institutions where they
Mm.
conduct, yes, what we call the lifer hearings or parole hearings.
And so they're
So,
in so many words like a jury. Like it,
correct.
it's
Cor-
they basically are making the judgment based off of how you how you make them feel, how you come across. Tell us your story. Tell us, we obviously we have records and information of what's actually been happening since you've been here, and then we just as as a jury decide, but it's not like a quote. It's not like a list of items that someone hits and they go, okay, well you hit all these, you can go.
Yes, it is. It is more so that. So
Oh,
there is absolutely, and it's very strenuous. I mean,
mm,
literally, when I say you have to dot I's and cross T's, very strenuous
wow, I didn't
process.
know
It is
that.
not that simple where they come in and they say, yeah, you've been you've been good in prison. You haven't had any issues in the last 3 years. You've been compliant. You're doing this, doing it. No, no, sir. It's not that simple. There is an outline. There's a guide that they literally have to follow to the letter of the law. And they have to do this on their own, self-guided, self-motivated. And
Wow.
it's pretty extensive. They have to present it to the board, the commissioners during their hearing. They have to show evidence of being rehabilitated, not just on paper, but their thought process, their response to these really, really um, deep questions, and so there's an evaluation that's going on. They have to have a psych evaluation, you know.
Mm,
Um, so there's a lot of parts to it um,
yeah.
before someone's, and then not only that though, once they're, let's just say the commissioner's granted, it still has to go to the governor to determine if he's going to approve it or not. So there's layers to it. It's not you just go before the commissioners. There's um, the prosecuting attorney, the DA, district attorney's office. Of course, the inmate has an attorney, um, which they can hire an attorney on their own and pay for, or they can have an attorney assigned to them. If there's victims involved, the victim's family has the option of attending and speaking on their behalf of the victim or on behalf of their family on what they want to see happen. So
Wow.
there's a lot of moving parts in it. It's not just, oh, it's time for your hearing. You go before
Yeah.
the commissioners. They say yay or nay. It's a pretty grueling
Yeah.
process.
So
Um,
they oversimplify it in movies because they definitely
oh,
make it seem
absolutely.
like,
Oh,
okay,
absolutely.
hey, you're for parole. I got one more week, and then you go, okay, I really want to do this for my life. I recognize this, and I understand if you don't let me out, I probably wouldn't let myself out either. But if you do give me the chance, I'm sure to do this and do this, and it's like, they go away and
Yeah,
they murmur a little bit, and they decide, hey, you got it. It's
yeah.
like,
No,
no, that ain't it.
that ain't how that goes. That is
That ain't
TV.
it,
That
buddy.
is movie. Yes. Now there are cases. So what I was speaking of was life inmates who are serving life sentences. But there are
Mm,
inmates who do have a release date that is um, pretty much guaranteed their release date. They're not serving life terms. So they're not serving life terms. So there are some inmates that go, oh, June 3rd is my day. I'm out of here.
yeah.
2023, I'm out. And provided that they, you know, don't get in trouble, things stay calm and they stay cool and collective. June 3rd come, yeah, yes, they get out. We have
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
And so the records, I don't know how much you guys look at the records, but
A
so
lot.
like as records are coming in, are you familiarizing yourself with exactly each case and what's going on? And if so, do you recall any that stood out that jump out to you right now in memory?
So absolutely, what our department was responsible for was, and I was the manager over the entire department, and there were like maybe 4 or 5 different classifications under my leadership that was responsible for different processes for each inmate for their records. So yes, we touch pretty much every file of an inmate that comes into the institution. We
Wow.
make sure that the file is in total compliance to the regulations and the state laws, right? So there was one case that it shook my I had to shake my head on. It was an inmate. He was given a third strike, so that has been third strikes have been not eliminated, but they've been reconstructed, I should say.
Yeah.
And he was a homeless person, and he went. I believe it was Target. He went into
Hmm.
Target and he stole toiletries, like toothpaste, toothbrush, soaps, just toiletries.
Hmm.
And they ended up giving him, I believe it was 25 years to life because he was a third
What?
strike. Yeah,
Oh, because the
that
third
one,
strike.
yeah.
Oh
I
my
thought, oh, now this is
goodness.
not disproportionate. I don't know what is. However, I also know now because there were some challenges, some citizens' votes on to revisit the third strike law. It got revamped. It still exists, but
Yeah.
it's not as automatic as
Yeah.
it was when it first was implemented. There were cases of like, yep, three strikes, yep, three strikes, and they weren't necessarily violent crimes.
Gotcha.
Some of it might have been because they were selling marijuana, or but a lot of those cases got reversed.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to venture to think that that particular inmate I'm sure was probably released when they
Wow.
revamped the third strike law.
Yeah. When I first heard the three strikes law, I was still young at the time, so the way they sold it, it's like it made sense. Like, well, yeah, I mean, if you just keep doing something, you keep blah blah blah. Like, as a kid, you kind of just accept it for what it is. Especially because as a kid, you think that everybody's on the up and up. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right.
Everybody in the government, they only tell the truth. There's 100% honesty. This is legal, lawful, and perfectly right to do, in every sense of the terms. And then you get older, and the veil is lifted, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, go ahead.
When that law was first implemented, I do think it was very disproportionately
Mm,
applied. And I'm saying that from the cases I read. So when it was reversed, it was called Proposition 36 when the citizens spoke and the state had, and we heard them, and so they revised it. And we were releasing inmates by the drove because they were in
wow.
there for like like again, not violent. So I don't want to alarm everyone. If they had a
Right.
violent crime, that
Right.
didn't apply. But if it was something petty, like the taking the items from Target, I had another guy. He
Thank you.
stole a
So
bike.
just trying to get clean. Just trying to
Yeah,
get clean.
just he's homeless. Another case where a guy stole a bicycle. Another case where a guy stole a beer out of 7-Eleven. Just
These
menial
are these are like
things.
practical. Well, maybe not the beer, but
I mean,
these
it's
are like
right,
practical, things. Obviously we're not saying stealing is okay.
correct. I was going to say
Definitely
that I'm
unlawful.
not stealing, but I'm just saying the sentencing was a little
Yeah.
stiff.
Yeah. I'm glad that got handled. Sad that even though they make adjustments to the legal system and the prison system and laws and everything, it's one thing we all know is that. But if you got it wrong, you can't get any of that person's time back. If,
No,
if they were wrongly accused or incarcerated or whatever the case was, even if they were rightly incarcerated, but just for the wrong amount of time, they can't get that back. And that brings me to a question about um, capital punishment. I know you are a Christian woman.
mhm,
I have been hearing recently of states bringing back um, death by firing squad, and other versions of capital punishment that are out there. And I know you said there are some people that you feel like you should be here for the safety of everyone else. Do you
right.
agree with capital punishment or not?
That question has always vexed me, and here's a couple of reasons why. One is you think about people who are innocent and are in, and I'll look at Central Five, the five young boys that spent
Yeah.
all that time in prison for something they didn't do. Imagine had they had, the death penalty and their lives was in jeopardy for something they did not do. Those kind of things really are disturb me, and it's hard to shake, especially when I know firsthand what happens in prisons.
Hmm.
Um,
I remember the ex-president Donald Trump was saying that we should bring back the death penalty based on them, because he
it,
was saying that they should get the death
these
penalty.
people that just yeah, that's a whole nother subject. But um, so when I come from that angle, I'm not at all in support of it at all. On the other hand, my family member, somebody did that to him, crucial.
Yeah.
What I still feel that way. I don't know.
Right.
I pray
That's
not ever
honest.
a question for me. I pray not ever. But I will say this: to be locked up in prison for the rest of your life is absolute sheer torture
Hmm.
and torment. So I don't know. Part of me say, let God be the judge and let them do their time. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
my
Just
concern about executing people again is the innocent ones. Which I believe Texas is has been pretty known for that, incarcerating people, getting ready to either have taken the life of someone and or about to, and these people were innocent. You know, I
all
have
right.
to
We
admit
go.
that make me. I do not have a flat no, or I don't have a
Yeah.
flat yes.
Yeah. It's always a tough space for me as well. I think for most Christians, because it pulls out your logic and your emotion and sits them
Mhm.
on the table at the same time to try to
Right,
figure out who's right, and that's very difficult to do
but I don't
because
think I speak for the families of victims who have lost family to tragic and brutal type crimes. I don't
yeah.
think that's be insensitive to just, yeah, no. And they're the ones hurting beyond. And I say that because when I would attend I'm going back to the life room hearings, and when family members are present and they get a chance to speak, James, is probably one of the most gut wrenching thing experiences, because these families, it may have happened 20 years ago, but they
Hmm.
still live with that pain like it just happened yesterday,
Wow.
and they have to
I can
relive it.
imagine.
Right, and so that made me really mindful of we don't we just can't speak for others because we don't know what somebody's living with.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense because you do hear you do hear some very graphic, tragic stories, and most of us can only imagine what it feels like to be the family of the affected
Yeah,
in that way. And it's like you said, you pray you never have to be the one to make that call. And
correct.
yeah, okay, so we'll end with a much lighter note.
Okay, thank
Much
you.
lighter note. At least in the conversation about your time in the Department of Correction. So they I forgot the amount, but they say prisoners make like 3 cents a day or $1 a
Yeah,
day. How much is it?
it's a little more than that. I believe when I left, it was 15 cents.
15 cents a day. I want to know, since you in
Not a day, it was
corrections.
cents an hour, I believe it
Oh, an
was.
hour, an hour. Okay,
Hmm.
it's
Okay, that
much
makes
better
a
than
big
15 cents a day.
right,
That's good.
right,
Much
right,
better.
right, right.
So I want to know, since you're in corrections, who's writing that check? Who writes the 15 cent an hour check?
Oh, you mean what the inmates assignments? We have an accounting department that's specifically for inmates. For example, if inmates, they have money on the books, if somebody comes and put money on their books, or, you know, they earn their money. There is a pot just for that and just for them.
Wow.
Now, if you're asking, do it come out of taxpayers' money,
No,
or
no, 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 no. I just never saw a paycheck distributed to an
so
inmate. So I just wanted to know
yeah,
how.
no,
When do they
they
see
don't
their money?
necessarily.
When's payday?
Yeah, they necessarily don't get a paycheck, but they get money put on their books.
Got you, got you.
Does
That
that make
makes
sense?
more sense than what I was thinking.
Yeah, it's not like they get a paycheck, they go to the bank and deposit it or anything like that.
I can just see everybody lining
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
Like maybe
yeah,
it's not like a regular bank check. It's just like jail bucks, and like you stand in line at the human resources office, you get your jail
yeah.
bucks check, and you go over and put that on your books, and
Right.
don't worry, my mind is completely off with what exactly happens behind those walls. All right, so first off, thank you for that walk through your life from KFC to the Department of Corrections. That is that
That's
is
that.
some journey. Sorry that you missed the chicken sandwich fiasco
Right.
because that might have been better than your time at the Department of Corrections.
Corrections, right?
um, but like every episode, I try to do a top five with my guests, and it's probably going to be the hardest part of the entire conversation is for you to make your way through this top five. I will try to give you what I think will be a easy topic for you to tell me your top five. I would like to know from you, Mrs. Clay,
Yes.
your top five R&B or soul singers of all time.
Ooh, I love Frankie Beverly and Maze. I don't
Woo! She
care
started
what
out
is
with
going
Frankie
on.
Beverly.
I don't care what song it is. I don't care what I'm doing. I have to get in that moment with Frankie Beverly and
Nice,
Maze.
nice.
Period.
All right, Frankie
I
Beverly, number one. I love it.
I'm gonna have to add. I've seen so many concerts this year. My husband and I had a chance to do Charlie Wilson. Um, um, and Chaka Khan, and then I saw Charlie on the cruise. Kim was at a jazz festival. I saw Kim again twice. We saw Earth, Wind, and Fire. We just kind of,
Woo! You've been out
yeah, we're
there.
just doing that right now. So my top is Maze. Um,
Okay.
I got to go to my gospel singer, Tamala Mann. Um,
Ooh, Tamala.
Tamala
Take
Mann.
me.
Um,
Take me.
There's a local artist that I don't know many people know about him, but he was once my pastor, and his name is Fleetwood E. Irving. He's like when he sings, it just blesses my
Okay,
soul.
Fleetwood.
Um,
Okay.
I can't leave out. I'm old school. I cannot leave out Gladys Knight.
There you go.
And Patti
There you
LaBelle.
go.
I can't leave them out. I'm gonna put them.
Midnight Train.
Yeah, Midnight
Patty.
Train. Cannot leave them out. And I would say, believe it or not, more of today. I like Bruno Mars. I'm so excited.
That is a list.
I like Bruno
That is
Mars.
a list.
So I'm a little all over the
I that
place, but
but I
I
love
like
it. I love it.
Bruno.
We got some local talent. We
Yeah,
got some 60s, 70s talent. We got
yeah,
some Hawaiian
yeah,
took from the 70s talent. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you hit all the marks.
yeah,
Some gospel.
yeah. And jazz artists. Whew, Eric Darius. I love the saxophone.
Mm.
You know, I like Brian Covert. I'm gonna stop there because I could go on and on.
Okay, it's like a top eight. It's like a top eight.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have.
I hope you had a great time.
Thank you.
I hope you come back and talk some more because I wanted to get into there was a question that I had I really wanted you to answer. I think we got time. When I was talking to you about this would be the last one, I promise. When I was talking to you about the high profile inmates, it made me think of um, a certain president who's currently facing multiple indictments in
Correct.
multiple
Mm-hmm.
counties,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially, if convicted, might find himself in a
Incarcerated.
state prison,
Mm-hmm.
or yeah. So somebody on that level, is it really what they say, or like they just get some cushy space where they're away from everybody else and it's almost like vacation, or is it not what they portray it to be in the movies?
So they are separated because of, again, even though um, they're inmates, that we still have an obligation to keep inmates safe, regardless
Yeah.
of what they've done and who they are. So inmate, there is what we would call sensitive needs
Mm.
for inmates. However, I believe what most of the the former president is going through is under, I believe it's under the federal jurisdiction. So that's a
Mm.
federal prison is different than state prison. And so the
Got it.
rumor is, I don't know a whole lot about federal prison, but the rumor is federal prison is definitely easier time than the state prison.
That's what
Um,
I've heard too.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the high probability of him being separated is possible, and the high probability of him being at federal versus state being a little more cushion, that's probably very true.
Next time we have you back, we will speak more about um, the youth, because
Oh,
I know you are
absolutely.
around the youth. I know
Yes.
you've gathered tons of experience and knowledge that you're trying to, bless the youth with, just from our conversation about the telling the stories of our ancestors. So
Correct.
I know blessing them with knowledge and information is a big part of what you are doing today. So I need you to come back so we can have that conversation. Will you do that?
Yes, I will. And thank you
Thank you.
for
We
having
appreciate
me.
it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Everyone listening, that has been Mrs. Clay, Mrs. Sandra Clay. I know that you guys were entertained, inspired, hopefully empowered. Maybe somebody out there is thinking about going into the corrections facility, or a corrections facility, or coming up with an organization that provides some other type of assistance for people that need it, that are maybe coming out of being incarcerated, trying to reestablish themselves in society. Whatever it is, hopefully some information today got you on your journey a little further. With that being said, this has been episode 22 of the Pod is Good podcast, and we will see you on the next episode.
Bye bye.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye, Mrs. Clay.
Bye. Have a great day.
You too. All right.